Captain Kim Soo-jin floated silently in the observation deck of the space station Cerberus. Outside the thick glass windows, millions of stars dotted the endless black space. She had been staring at the same view for 3 months now. 3 months of complete silence. 3 months of waiting. The station was built at the very edge of human space, farther from Earth than any human had ever lived before. It was a secret place. No one knew they were here except a few people back on Earth. The station had no lights on the outside. It sent no radio signals. It was invisible and silent, like a ghost floating in the dark. Soo-jin was 35 years old and had spent half her life in space. She had volunteered for this mission because someone had to do it. Someone had to watch the edge of human space and look for danger. That danger had a name. They called it the Swarm. The Swarm had destroyed 3 human colonies in the Outer Rim. Thousands of people had died. Ships, buildings, entire cities had been wiped out completely. Then the Swarm had disappeared into deep space, leaving no trace behind. Earth's government wanted to know if it would come back. They wanted to be ready. That was why Cerberus existed. That was why 12 people had agreed to live in darkness and silence at the edge of everything they knew. Soo-jin heard soft footsteps behind her. She turned to see Park Min-ho, the communications officer. He was young, maybe 25, with tired eyes that showed the strain of their long mission. He moved carefully in the low gravity, trying not to make any noise. "Captain," he whispered, his voice barely loud enough to hear. "The long-range sensors are picking up something." Soo-jin felt her heart beat faster. After 3 months of nothing, the sensors had found something. She followed Min-ho through the narrow corridors of the station. Everything was dark except for small emergency lights that glowed red like tiny stars. The station was not big. 12 people lived in a space smaller than most apartment buildings on Earth. They had to be quiet all the time. They had to keep all lights turned off. They could not send any messages to Earth. If the Swarm was out there watching, any signal could give away their position. They reached the sensor room where Dr. Lee Da-eun was working. She was the science officer, a woman in her 40s who knew more about space than anyone else on the station. Her face was lit by the glow of her computer screens. The data on the screens made Soo-jin's blood run cold. "What am I looking at?" Soo-jin asked quietly. "Something big," Da-eun replied. "The energy readings are massive, much bigger than anything we've seen before, and it's not matching any patterns in our database." Soo-jin studied the readings. Whatever was out there was huge. The sensors showed a group of objects moving together through space. They were still very far away, but they were coming toward human space. "Is it the Swarm?" she asked. Da-eun shook her head. "No, this is something different, something we've never seen before." Lieutenant Commander Choi Young-woo entered the room. He was Soo-jin's second in command, an older man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had fought in several space battles and knew the signs of danger. "Captain," he said in a low voice, "if we send a warning to Earth now, we might save millions of lives. But if we use our communications, whatever is out there will know exactly where we are." Soo-jin felt the weight of command pressing down on her. 12 people were depending on her decision, but more than that, all of humanity might depend on what she chose to do next. She looked at the sensor readings again. The unknown objects were still days away from reaching human space. They had time to learn more. They had time to understand what they were facing. "We hold position," she decided. "We watch. We learn what we're dealing with before we act." Young-woo nodded. He understood the risk they were taking. If they were wrong, if these objects were hostile, Earth would have no warning. But if they revealed themselves too early, they would lose their only advantage. The crew of Cerberus returned to their posts. They continued their silent watch at the edge of human space. Outside, the unknown fleet continued its approach. Every hour brought it closer to human space. Every hour brought them closer to answers they might not want to know. Soo-jin returned to the observation deck. She stared out at the stars and thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of people living their normal lives, not knowing that 12 humans stood between them and the unknown. She thought about her choice to stay silent and hidden. In the darkness of space, Cerberus continued its lonely vigil. The station was humanity's secret eye, watching for dangers that might come from the vast emptiness between the stars. Whatever was approaching, they would be ready. They had to be ready. The unknown fleet grew larger on their sensors with each passing hour. Soon, they would know what humanity was truly facing at the edge of space. Captain Kim Soo-jin pressed, her face closer to the telescope display. What she saw made her stomach turn cold. The alien ships were enormous, each one bigger than the largest human battleship. They moved in perfect formation, like a deadly dance across the stars. "How many ships?" she asked Dr. Lee De-yoon. 47 large vessels, Captain, plus hundreds of smaller craft. Da-eun's voice was steady, but her hands shook as she worked the controls. "They're not searching for anything. They're working." For 2 days, the crew of Cerberus had watched the alien fleet. The ships had stopped at the edge of what used to be human colonies, 3 worlds where thousands of people had lived and worked, before the swarm destroyed everything. Park Min-ho looked up from his communication station. His young face was pale with exhaustion. He had been working day and night to understand the alien signals. "Captain, I've broken part of their language. They call themselves the Keth-Mori Empire. What are they saying about our colonies?" Soo-jin asked. Min-ho swallowed hard. "They think the destroyed colonies are just old ruins. They believe some natural disaster wiped them out long ago. They don't know humans ever lived there." Lieutenant Commander Choi Young-woo moved to stand beside. "Soo-jin, they think we're extinct?" "It gets worse," Min-ho continued. "They're talking about claiming this entire region of space. They think it's empty territory, free for the taking." Soo-jin watched through the telescope as alien ships began building structures in space. Huge metal frameworks grew like flowers, blooming in fast motion. The aliens worked with incredible speed and precision. Everything they did followed exact patterns. "They're building bases," reported Engineer Han Ji-woo from her station. "Supply depots, communication arrays, landing platforms. This isn't exploration, Captain. This is preparation for invasion." The truth hit Soo-jin like a physical blow. The Keth-Mori weren't just passing through human space. They were preparing to take it over completely. And they had no idea that humans were still alive and fighting. "Show me their ships again," she ordered. Da-eun switched the display to show the alien fleet in detail. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They looked like works of art made from metal and energy. But Soo-jin could see the weapons. She could see the power sources that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. "We can't fight them," Young-woo said quietly. "If they have 47 ships like this, and this is just their advance force, how long before their main fleet arrives?" Soo-jin asked. Min-ho checked his translations again. 18 days, Captain. They're waiting for reinforcements before they move into what they call the inner territories. Soo-jin knew what that meant. The inner territories were human space. Earth, Mars. All the worlds where billions of people lived and worked and loved, completely unaware of the danger coming toward them. "We have to warn Earth," Young-woo said. "Even if it reveals our position." Soo-jin stared at the alien fleet. She thought about her options. If they sent a warning now, Earth would have 18 days to prepare. But 18 days might not be enough time to build defenses against technology this advanced. And the moment they sent a signal, the Keth-Mori would know humans were still alive. "Captain," Da-eun said softly, "I've been studying their behavior patterns. Everything they do is perfectly organized. They follow exact procedures for everything. But what? They never change their plans. Even when something unexpected happens, they just follow the same pattern. They don't seem to know how to improvise or adapt." Soo-jin thought about this. Humans were good at changing plans. Humans were good at finding new solutions when old ones didn't work. Maybe that was something the aliens had never learned to do. She made her decision. "We don't send a warning yet," she announced. The crew looked at her with surprise and worry. "If we warn Earth now, they'll try to fight these aliens with conventional weapons. They'll lose." Then what do we do? Youngwoo asked. Sujin looked at each member of her crew. 12 humans standing at the edge of everything they knew. 12 people who might be humanity's only hope. We get closer, she said. We learn everything we can about them. We find their weaknesses. Then we show them something they've never seen before. What's that? Minho asked. Human creativity, Sujin replied. They think in patterns. We think in possibilities. They follow rules. We break rules when we need to. The crew of Cerberus prepared for the most dangerous phase of their mission. Outside, the Keth Mori continued building their invasion bases, completely unaware that 12 humans were watching their every move. The aliens believed they were claiming empty space. They were about to learn how wrong they were. They were about to discover that humans never give up, never surrender, and never stop fighting for their home. In the darkness between stars, the secret war for humanity's future was about to begin. Captain Kim Soo-jin stared at the star charts spread across the table in the station's small meeting room. Red dots marked the positions of Keth Mori ships. Blue lines showed their patrol routes. Everything was perfectly organized, just like Dr. Lee Da-yoon had said. They've been following the same patterns for 5 days, Da-eun reported. Same routes, same timing, same procedures. It's like they're following a computer program. Engineer Han Ji-woo looked worried. Captain, the experimental jump drive wasn't designed for this kind of mission. If we get too close to their fleet, one miscalculation could tear us apart. Soo-jin nodded. She understood the risk. The jump drive was new technology, barely tested. It could move their small station instantly, across vast distances, but it was dangerous. One mistake and they would be scattered across space in tiny pieces. How close do we need to get? She asked. Park Min-ho checked his communication equipment. To intercept their command signals, we need to be within 1 million kilometers of their flagship. That's very close, Captain. Lieutenant Commander Choi, Youngwoo studied the alien fleet positions. Their flagship is in the center of the formation, surrounded by escort ships. If they detect us, they won't. Soo-jin said with more confidence than she felt. We've been invisible for 3 months. We can stay invisible for 3 more days. She looked at each member of her crew. They were tired. Living in darkness and silence for months had worn them down, but they were still ready to fight, still ready to risk everything for Earth. Da-eun, what else have you learned about them? The science officer pulled up data on her tablet. The Keth Mori are fascinating from a biological standpoint. They're highly intelligent, but their intelligence works differently from ours. They solve problems by following logical steps. They never guess, they never take risks. And that's a weakness? Minho asked. It could be, Da-eun replied. Humans are good at making intuitive leaps. We can see solutions that logic alone can't find. The Keth Mori might not know how to handle that kind of thinking. Soo-jin thought about this. Every human victory in space had come from doing something unexpected. Humans won battles by being unpredictable, by taking risks that seemed crazy but somehow worked. What's their invasion timeline? She asked. Minho consulted his translation notes. 14 days until the main fleet arrives. Then they'll move into human space in 3 waves. First wave targets the outer colonies. Second wave goes for the industrial worlds. Third wave heads straight for Earth. How many ships in the main fleet? Over 300, Captain, including ships they call world breakers. The room fell silent. 300 advanced alien warships against Earth's small defense fleet. It would be a massacre. We have to do something, Youngwoo said. But what can 12 people do against an entire empire? Soo-jin stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, she could see the distant glow of the Keth Mori fleet. So far away, but so dangerous. We do what humans do best, she said finally. We improvise. She turned back to her crew. Han, can you modify our scientific equipment? Turn our sensors into weapons? The engineer frowned. What kind of weapons, Captain? The kind that don't look like weapons. The Keth Mori are using the gravity fields of nearby stars to power their bases. What if we could affect those gravity fields? Da-yoon's eyes lit up with understanding. Solar flares. Gravitational anomalies. We could make it look like natural disasters. Exactly. They think in patterns, so they'll try to find a pattern in the disasters. But there won't be one, because we'll be causing them. Han started making calculations on her computer. It's possible, Captain. Our deep space monitoring equipment was designed to measure stellar phenomena. With some modifications, we might be able to trigger them instead. How long do you need? 2 days, maybe 3. You have 1 day, Sujin said. Minho, I need you to map their communication network. Every ship, every base, every relay station. Yes, Captain. Dayun, I need you to create something special. A computer virus, but not one that destroys their systems. What should it do? Sujin smiled, grimly. It should teach their computers to think like humans, to be creative, to make intuitive leaps, to take risks. Dayun stared at her. Captain, that could drive their artificial intelligence systems completely insane. That's the idea. Youngwoo shook his head. This is the craziest plan I've ever heard. Good, Sujin replied. That means the Kethmori will never see it coming. The crew of Cerberus prepared for their desperate gambit. They would jump into the heart of enemy territory with untested weapons and an impossible plan. They would try to convince an entire alien fleet that the universe itself was fighting against them. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was completely unpredictable. It was perfectly human. As the hours counted down to their jump, Sujin looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, Earth waited unknowing. Billions of people living their lives, trusting that someone would protect them from the darkness between the stars. 12 humans were about to keep that trust, or die trying. The jump was terrifying. Captain Kim Soo-jin felt her body stretched and compressed as Cerberus folded space around itself. For 3 seconds that felt like hours. She existed in too many places at once. Then reality snapped back into focus. They had arrived deep inside Kethmori territory. Jump successful, Engineer Han Ji-woo reported, her voice shaky. We're positioned 2 million kilometers from their main supply base. Dr. Lee Da-yoon checked her sensors. No alarms from their fleet. They don't know we're here. Sujin looked out at the alien base through their telescope. It was a massive structure built around a young star. Metal arms reached out from the central hub like the legs of a giant spider. Energy flowed from the star into the base, powering the entire Kethmori operation. Perfect target, she said. Han, are the modifications ready? The engineer nodded, toward her jury-rigged equipment. Their scientific instruments had been transformed into something entirely new. Instead of just measuring space phenomena, they could now influence them. It was dangerous technology that had never been tested. The star is young and unstable, Han explained. If we can create the right gravitational pulse, we can trigger a massive solar flare. The energy will destroy everything within 10 million kilometers, including us if we're not careful. Lieutenant Commander Choi Young-woo added. That's why we won't be here when it happens, Sujin replied. How long do we have? Solar flare will trigger in 6 hours, Han said. We need to be at least 50 million kilometers away when it hits. Communications Officer Park Min-ho was monitoring Kethmori transmissions. Captain, they're reporting normal operations, no sign they suspect anything. Sujin watched Han work with the modified equipment. The young engineer's hands moved quickly over controls that had been designed for entirely different purposes. She was turning humanity's most advanced space telescope into a weapon that could control stars. Initiating gravitational pulse, Han announced. On the view screen, nothing seemed to happen. The Kethmori base continued its normal operations. Ships moved in and out of the docking bays. Energy flowed from the star in steady streams. Did it work? Youngwoo asked. We'll know in 5 hours and 53 minutes, Han replied. Cerberus jumped away to their next target. This time they positioned themselves near a Kethmori mining operation in an asteroid field. The aliens were harvesting rare metals from the floating rocks, turning them into materials for their war fleet. This one's different, Da-eun said as she studied the setup. They're using artificial gravity generators to move the asteroids. If we can disrupt the gravity field, chain reaction, Sujin understood. The asteroids will crash into each other and into their ships. It took Han 2 hours to recalibrate their equipment for this new target. The gravitational field around the mining operation was complex, held in perfect balance by Kethmori technology. But balance could be broken. Pulse sent, Han reported. Again, nothing seemed to happen immediately. The asteroid mining continued normally, but in 3 hours, the gravitational field would collapse and chaos would follow. Cerberus jumped to their third target. This base was different from the others. It was built in empty space far from any star or planet. Massive communication arrays reached out in all directions, coordinating the movements of the entire Kethmori fleet. This is their command center, Minho realized. All their orders come from here. Then this is where we plant Dayun's virus, Sujin decided. Dayun held up a small data crystal. Inside was her greatest creation, a computer program that would teach Kethmori artificial intelligence to think like humans, to be creative, to take risks, to make intuitive leaps that logic couldn't explain. Are you sure this will work? Youngwoo asked. I'm sure it will do something, Da-un replied. Whether that something helps us or destroys us, I honestly don't know. They were preparing to approach the command base when alarms started blaring throughout Cerberus. Captain, Minho shouted over the noise. Massive energy surge detected. Source, the first target. On the view screen, they watched their first success. The young star erupted in a solar flare that dwarfed anything in Earth's solar system. The Kethmori supply base vanished in seconds, consumed by stellar fire. The flare swept outward, destroying 6 alien ships that had been too close to escape. It worked, Han whispered in amazement. Minho was intercepting frantic Kethmori communications. They're calling it a stellar malfunction. They think it was a natural disaster. Good, Sujin said. Let them think that. What about the second target? They didn't have to wait long. The asteroid field collapsed exactly as predicted. Millions of tons of rock crashed together in a chain reaction that destroyed the mining operation and 4 more Kethmori ships. More confused alien transmissions filled the communication channels. They're starting to panic, Minho reported. They're reporting cosmic anomalies and impossible gravitational failures. They have no idea someone is causing this. Perfect, Sujin said. Now for the big target. Cerberus approached the Kethmori command base. This would be their most dangerous mission yet. They had to get close enough to upload Dayun's virus directly into the alien computer systems. 3 Kethmori battleships approaching, Youngwoo warned. They're not attacking. Looks like a routine patrol. They still don't know we're here, Sojin said. Let's keep it that way. The virus upload would take 10 minutes. 10 minutes of staying hidden right under the noses of the most powerful alien fleet in the galaxy. 10 minutes to change the course of the war. Captain Kim Soo-jin watched the massive Kethmori command ship grow larger on their screens. It was beautiful and terrifying, like a floating city made of metal and light. Hundreds of smaller ships surrounded it in perfect formation. Final approach, Engineer Han Ji-woo announced. Her hands shook as she prepared the jump drive for their most dangerous mission. Jump coordinates locked on the flagship's central computer core. Dr. Lee Da-eun clutched the data crystal containing her virus. Captain, once we upload this, there's no going back. Their entire fleet will either destroy itself or become completely unpredictable. Better unpredictable than aimed at Earth, Soo-jin replied. Communications Officer Park Min-ho was monitoring alien transmissions. They're still reporting the other attacks as natural disasters. They have no idea we're responsible. Lieutenant? Commander Choi Youngwoo checked his weapon one final time. Captain, once we materialize inside their ship, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before they organize a response. That's not much time. It's enough, Soo-jin said. Everyone ready? The crew of Cerberus nodded. 12 humans about to jump into the heart of an alien battleship. It was suicide. It was crazy. It was their only chance. Jump, Soo-jin ordered. Reality twisted, space folded, and suddenly they were inside the Kethmori flagship. Alarms screamed throughout the alien ship. Red lights flashed as the Kethmori crew rushed to understand what had happened. A human space station had somehow appeared in their most secure location. "Move!" Sujin shouted. The crew of Cerberus ran through the corridors they had studied for days. The ship's layout was logical and organized, just like everything else about the Kethmori. That made it easier to navigate, but also easier for the aliens to corner them. Kethmori soldiers appeared ahead of them. They were tall, thin creatures wearing armor that gleamed like mirrors. Their weapons fired beams of energy that scorched the walls where the humans had been standing. Young Wu returned fire with human weapons. The alien soldiers fell back, confused by the chaotic nature of human tactics. They had expected organized resistance, not the wild improvisation of desperate humans. "Computer core is 3 levels up," Da-Un called out as they reached a transport shaft. Han rigged an explosive device to the shaft's controls. "This should give us a few minutes before they can follow." They climbed through the transport shaft, while explosions echoed below them. The Kethmori were trying to cut through Han's barriers, but human engineering was different from their own. It didn't follow their logical rules. The computer core was a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light. Information flowed through the crystals like water through transparent rivers. It was the brain of the entire Kethmori fleet. "Beautiful," Da-Un whispered. Then she got to work. Her equipment interfaced with the alien computer system. The virus began to upload, flowing into the Kethmori network like poison into bloodstream. But this poison wouldn't kill, it would teach. 30% uploaded, Da-Un reported. Kethmori soldiers broke through the barriers below. Footsteps echoed in the transport shaft. They were coming. 50%. Young Wu and half the crew took positions at the chamber entrance. Energy. Beams lit up the corridor as the battle began. The aliens fought with perfect coordination, but the humans fought with desperate creativity. 70%. More Kethmori arrived. Too many to fight. The humans fell back toward the computer core using the crystal structures as cover. Energy beams shattered some of the crystals, but the computer kept working. 90%. And an alien soldier broke through their defense. He raised his weapon toward Da-Un. Young Wu threw himself between them, taking the energy beam in his chest. He fell without a sound. "Upload complete," Da-Un announced. The effect was immediate. The lights in the computer core began flashing in random patterns. The crystal structures pulsed irregularly. Throughout the ship, systems began behaving strangely. Sujin activated her emergency transmitter. If they were going to die, Earth would at least know what had happened. "This is Captain Kim Sujin of Monitoring Station Cerberus. The Kethmori invasion fleet has been neutralized. We've taught their computers to think like humans. The edge holds." But they weren't dead yet. The Kethmori soldiers had stopped firing. They were staring at their weapons in confusion. The weapons were no longer following their programmed targeting systems. Instead, they were making creative decisions about what to shoot. Throughout the fleet, the virus spread from ship to ship. Kethmori artificial intelligence systems began experiencing something they had never known before: intuition. They started taking risks, making guesses, acting on incomplete information. The result was chaos. Ships turned on each other as their computers decided to try new tactical approaches. Navigation systems chose creative routes that led to collisions. Weapon systems fired at targets that seemed interesting rather than threatening. The perfect Kethmori fleet began tearing itself apart with newfound creativity. "We did it," Minho whispered in amazement. "We actually did it." Sujin looked at Young Wu's still form and felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. They had won, but the cost was high. One of her crew would never see Earth again. The Kethmori soldiers in the computer core had stopped trying to fight. Their own equipment was acting unpredictably. They seemed lost, unable to cope with technology that no longer followed logical patterns. Cerberus used its jump drive one final time, escaping the chaos of the alien fleet. From a safe distance, they watched the Kethmori ships spin away into space, their crews struggling with artificial intelligence that had learned to think like humans. Earth was safe. The edge had held. And 12 humans had proven that sometimes The greatest weapon isn't superior technology, but the willingness to think differently than anyone expects.